In the last video, I was going over the hairline placement, and in this video, I'm going to be going over the interior placement of this foliage. And I'm going to be talking to you about some choices that I made and the steps that I took to get the final outcome. Again, I was doing a foliage conversion. She was just regular foils, and she wanted something that was a little bit more lived in and less maintenance. So I'm going to take you through the steps and get you to... Hello, my fellow stylists, enthusiasts, and friends. Welcome to my channel. If you are new here, thank you for stopping by. I'm Maureen Moody, and I'm the Curious Stylist. And if you're curious and nerding out on hair color is fun for you, you may want to stick around. And to all my returning subscribers, you already know, we're color geeks here.
So now when I'm doing the interior part of the hair, I am actually just diffusing the line. And so I do this by I like to do a little bit of a chunky weave here. And I'm going to break up her foil lines by painting these highlights on in a diagonal way. And as you can see, I'm placing the lightener down, and then I kind of feather it up. But as I'm feathering it up, I'm going to be feathering it up on a diagonal line. And that's going to help to diffuse those highlight lines. Now, she does have a couple months of growth, so this is helpful to do, when she's had about, I'd say, 3 months growth. Now, I wanted to talk to you about the lightener that I used and how I used it. So as you can see, I'm sort of working that lightener with the comb, and I'm doing that to sort of diffuse it because I didn't really like the strong placement of the lightener that I put down, so I'm just trying to diffuse that up a little bit more. So I did use Oligo's Cool Light Blonde, and I did not use a very strong peroxide. I think I used 15 volume on that one, and it's because she wanted to go deeper overall. So that is the choice that I made. I made a choice to not go super blonde. Her ends were pretty light already. I really didn't want to beat them up too much. So for this, I decided to go with like a 15 volume. Later on, I will be taking the lightener and pulling it through to the ends, but I'm not doing that while the lightener strength is strong. So the second part I'm doing right now is a low light. And as you can see, I'm painting that low light down, and I'm kind of shearing it out. Now I'm using Calura, their permanent color, and I'm using it as a 1:1:1 ratio. So it's 1 part Calura, 1 part conditioner, and 1 part 10 volume. And this is my low light formula. And the reason why I use this as my low light formula is that it's going to have a little bit more staying power than a gloss low light would. So here you can see the wavy highlights that I'm using, and I'm painting them on that diagonal, and the diagonal is going away and down from the face. So that is where I'm placing that lightener. See how I'm using it? And I'm putting a foil on top of it because I don't want to smush the hair into that, fold it in. So I really like putting those foils on top of another. And I'm using Costco foils for this job. And I find them to be great because they're a little bit longer, but they're not like super long, but they're not bad for a job like this. So the next thing you're seeing over here is that I am taking up my foil and I'm getting ready to do my teasy lights. Now, as you can see in this texture, I'm doing a zigzag pattern, and I'm picking up the zigzags, and then I'm back combing, and I'm placing the lightener a little bit lower down than I did with my whoopie lights. So the teasy lights are done with the zigzag pattern, and I'm placing the lightener slightly lower to give more diffusion. So I'm taking this zigzag bottom part of the pattern, and you can see it's kind of kinky and weird. You'll see this, how it's got those, it looks like you can see the ridges, and I'm putting the low light in. And I'm using Calura 7N and 7G. And the G is to help replace the warmth from the highlights that are gone. And I'm working that down, and it's going to help blur out those lines. And by using a permanent color, but doing it in a sheared out way, it's going to help those lowlights to last a little bit longer and have better staying power. Okay, so I'm a sucker for a good diagram, and these diagrams kind of tell you the highlight low light patterns that we're doing right now and how I place the color. So you might want to go back and refer to that in the video, but I'm going to do it in 3 stages, and this is the first stage. Again, I'm doing pretty large weaves because I want hers to have like a really pretty chunky highlight with definition. And so I'm weaving out her, and I'm placing the highlights again on the diagonal, away and down from the face, just like in the diagram. So I'm just going to speed this up a little bit faster, and I'm using the back end of my comb, and as you can see, I'm back combing or back brushing so that I blur out those lines, and I put the other foil on so that there's no contamination going on. So I'm doing that zigzag pattern, as you can see, and I'm going to put a low light here. As normally I would put a teasy light here, but because I'm getting close to the line and she has a lot of blonde going on, I really want to blur that out. So I'm putting a low light in, and I'm just keeping another foil on top. Sometimes I find that instead of folding it all up and making it packets, it can kind of smush the hair on the ends, which I want to keep bright, into the color, and that looks messy. So I feel like sometimes when you encapsulate with another foil on the top, it just makes the work much neater and a lot easier to deal with. So I'm going to start doing the back part of her head and putting the foils in there. So as I'm coming back into the video world, I'm working on this new editing software, which is DaVinci Resolve, and I'm trying to work it out so that I'm getting better with this, but there's a learning curve. So these videos aren't exactly what I want, but I feel like done is better than perfect. And that's kind of what I'm doing here. This video is not the best, but I think it's going to be what it's going to be until I get better with this. Now I am using the lightener, and if you noticed, I planted that in a V pattern, and that's going to help diffuse the light. Here is a diagram of roughly what I did in the back part of her hair. So there's the wavy lights, the teasy lights, and of course the low lights below that. So now it's time to pull out some of the foils and pull the lightener away and dry it out. While I'm doing this too, I'm pulling it towards the end so that sometimes you know how the ends can be a little muddy. This helps to kind of perk it out in a nice way. And because the lightener is already developed with the peroxide, and the peroxide is pretty much dyed out at this point, it's not going to hurt the hair that much because it's just moving with the power of the bleach, but not the developer. So it's not really super damaging to the hair. I'm going to be doing this throughout the entire head and pulling those bleach pieces down on all of the lengths in the foils so that I can get a more continuity and brightness from roots to ends. So I'm going to do that throughout the rest of this particular clip. I'm just pulling lightener out and pulling it down to add continuity throughout the entire foliage.
If you are finding value in this content, can you please smash the like button and subscribe? I make weekly videos.
So now I'm getting into the glossing part of this video. So I used the Oligos 7N and I used 7GV on her root because I really wanted to smudge that out. So my first step is I'm going to be placing the darker color on. Now, if you remember, because we're doing the darker color, she doesn't want to be super bright. So when I go to tone her hair at the ends, I'm going to be using a 9GV on her ends because I still want them to have like a beautiful golden cast to them, but I want to control it a little bit with the GV. The V helps to kind of center the gold so it's not super bright. I find it to be a really beautiful gloss, and I really liked the way that this particular color ended up. So like I said, step one, I'm blending out all these old foils and then the foils that I placed in, and by putting that root down and smudging it and using that comb, the comb has like a little brush on the one end, and then there's like a comb, and it helps to blend that out. It's such a nice comb. I'm really enjoying it. The only thing I wish about the Formar comb is that it wasn't so light because it stains, and it looks pretty bad. And I've only had it for about a month, and it looks kind of like garbage. But it does the job, and I really can't live without it. So I continue to work up the head, and I'm trying not to get around the hairline because I still want it to be pretty bright. So right now I'm sectioning that hairline out, but I am smudging this down pretty good because I want these highlights to be there and sort of shimmer through, but I don't want them to be super bright. So I'm painting that down at least about 2 inches, maybe even 3. And as you can see, I paint it down, and then when I'm done, I comb it to blur out those ends so that you don't see any hard lines, and it just gives a soft transition. So I am using, like I said, Oligo 7N and 7GV. So on her front, when I started to do the highlights towards the bottom and the ends, I used a 9 GV and a little bit of 9N to go around the face. It was brighter and prettier, but it's still a little deeper because she wanted to have a less maintenance. And I really think that this came out pretty darn good. So I'm just blow drying her now, and I'm going to show you the before and after so that you can see the difference between, you know, what she had and what we were able to achieve. So this is her before, and this picture is her after, and you can see now she has more blended, less maintenance, and it came out exactly how she wanted it to be.